Good evening, our Patriot family, and welcome to another edition of the Fight for Patriotism, where we will cover historical events under previous government's supervision in which we can tie to the government that we have now. On tonight's episode, we are going to be discussing Ruby Ridge, Waco, and the Oklahoma City bombing. These all have similarities because they were all connected to certain three-letter agencies that we have in the government, unfortunately. Ruby Ridge was an 11-day siege where the United States Marshals initiated an action to apprehend and arrest Randy Weaver in Idaho in August 1992. Waco was a siege that was carried out by the federal government, Texas state law enforcement, and the United States military between February 28 and April 19, 1993. It was a siege on a compound that belonged to a religious sect. Then the Oklahoma City bombing was apparently a domestic terrorist attack, which in my personal opinion it was set up by our government just like 9/11, which they used a truck bombing of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building on April 19, 1995. The reason why I want to bring these events up is because I truly feel like that the government today is basically doing the exact same thing in the Sussman case because they don't want anything to do with actual proof of what actually happened in 2016. I'm your producer, host, and brother Zachary Smouse, and with me are your Patriot brothers John Dunning, Camo Carl, and Corn Pot. I'll start off with a prayer, play my introduction, and then I'll check on how our panel is today. Dear Lord, I just want to start off by asking for a layer of protection for this podcast so it can be available for multiple people to see and understand what the government is actually doing. Lord, I'm trying my best to spread light on history so your children could learn how to build a brighter future for generations to come. Thank you for everything you do. I love you, my Lord. Amen.
Amen.
So which one we gonna start with?
We need you now. We need you now. One day, one day, one day, I hope you see the truth. This puppet show stays on because of you. We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I know it's fun, but get ready to pay your dues. Oh God, come back home. This crazy world is filled with liars and abusers. We need you now before we're too far gone. I hope one day they finally see the truth. God, we need you now.
Way too long.
How are you guys doing today?
Doing good, ready to get on these topics. These are the things people be hearing about. Especially, in my opinion, Ruby Ridge. That's textbook government tyranny.
Exactly. Zach, was you going to play the one of the Patriots, the Bundy Ranch? Or maybe later? Yeah, with Ruby Ridge and Waco and Oklahoma City, they're all kind of tied in together. I shared a video with Zach. It was the American Patriots. It's with the Bundy Ranch, where the people in the Bundy Ranch and the militias actually stood up against the government, the tyranny, because the government, Bureau of Land Management, was wanting to control federal land and not let the Bundys graze, let their cattle, and they actually confiscated some of their cattle. And the militia and the Bundys stood up against them and got their cattle back.
There was a moment in that standoff where a guy named Dennis Michael Lynch walked between the two factions and likely prevented gunfire. It was close.
Right. Yeah, but the Bureau of Land Management, they decided, okay, we're not going to let it escalate, so they backed down and let the people win.
Dennis Michael Lynch has his own website. He's been censored on multiple platforms, but he is a pretty good source of news.
Yeah, it's a little harder for them to pull what they used to be able to pull. Like all the three we're going to go on tonight, they were all pre-cell phone, pre-camera phone. Everybody out there at Bundy Ranch all had phones recording everything, so government had to play a little different.
Right. Things are changing, That's like a lot of people see doom and gloom, which I think we're going to have some rough waters, but I don't see so much doom and gloom. I see a lot of good things coming. We just got to get through the rough waters.
I think the next two elections are going to show it.
John, we're riding the razor's edge and we're getting to the end of the blade. It could go either way.
Yeah. Go ahead, Zach.
Maybe in a later date, Brother John. By the way, hey chat, I'm going to pause the Ruby Ridge and Oklahoma City videos because they're long and we want to engage with the chat.
You are the maestro, Zach. Do what you gotta do.
I was trying to get those links to share with everybody, but they're on Pal Talk and I couldn't get them. My computer actually froze up trying to do it.
To start
What's that
off,
Pal
I'll play a
Talk like?
documentary on Ruby Ridge.
I think I interrupted you, Zach. I didn't mean to.
To start off, I'll play a documentary on Ruby Ridge.
The murder of the Weavers.
Yeah, I guess y'all all heard that Randy Weaver died 2 or 3 days ago, 4 days ago, something like that.
Yes, I did. '72, I believe.
Something like that, 72, 74, somewhere in there, yeah.
At the time, it was all shrouded in secrecy. But there were meetings at the highest of levels, clear back to Washington, D.C., like, how can we affect the arrest of this man? Some people, I later found out, were actually advocating a front-on tactical assault, to go up there with armored personnel carriers and, whatever kind of armament they needed and just shoot it out with him.
I told Randy, I said, you don't really understand what the full weight and power of this government is and what it would really mean if you want a confrontation with it. I think I used the term that it's like a locomotive. Once you get it rolling down the tracks, it's hard to stop.
You call yourself an American? These are Americans. These are God-fearing people. You don't even know your Constitution. Go back and read what your founding fathers said.
We were taught from a very early age to never point a gun at anything you don't plan on shooting. Dad was very, very strict about that. Guns were tools in our family. They were there for protection from wild animals or to hunt game. Guns were there for a purpose.
This is North Idaho, 1992. 50 miles or so from the Canadian border. Here's a man with his family, armed to the teeth, who knew that a federal judge wanted him to come to court, and he was refusing to do that. And he lived with the consequences.
When Mom and Dad met, Dad was in the Army. He was a Green Beret. It wasn't until he was home on leave that they actually got together and really started to date and fall in love. I have memories of hot Iowa summers and cold Iowa winters in Grandma and Grandpa's farm. I do remember my parents discussing always wanting to move to the mountains. So, you know, they learned about how to raise kids without electricity and things like that. And then I remember they started to sell things, and Mom and Dad, you know, just prepared by buying stuff you might need living on top of a mountain somewhere.
Randy Weaver wanted to move his family from Iowa to Idaho, partly because of the farm crisis. By the early 1980s, the economy in Iowa had been deteriorating for some time. Fuel and input costs were rising, and farmers were going bankrupt.
You don't need to sell it.
I'm going to sell it. It's part of my business, part of my livelihood.
Not to do away with the farmers, sir.
I'm not doing away with the farmers.
Wait on it. Give the farmer a break.
Farmers are losing their family farms. Interest rates are 15, 16, 18%. Randy's working at the John Deere factory, afraid that he was going to get fired. And for the Weavers, who are starting to explore the idea of Bible prophecy, they began to see things that were occurring as being part of the end times, the very thing that the book of Revelations was promising. And I think those connections were the ones Vicky especially was making.
My mom interpreted some of the things in the Bible very literally. There's a verse in the Old Testament about not having graven images. And so there was a point when the TV, you know, kind of left, and my parents started to dig deeper into the Bible. They did believe in an apocalyptic future. And I think that they started to take that more seriously as they got ready to leave Iowa. Fear was a big part of it.
As they leave Iowa, they're telling their friends and family that a great conflagration is coming and they must seek a place to be safe. They must go to the west and find a mountaintop. They were really imagining this fortress, this place where they could really separate themselves from a corrupt and dangerous world.
It was incredibly remote. I mean, they had no electricity, no running water, no indoor plumbing. We're talking about a cabin made by Randy Weaver and his wife on a mountaintop. They thought that they were living on the edge of Armageddon. And this was a sort of sanctuary.
Does that sound like today? We are basically going through hard times.
Exactly, Zach. That's like you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, right now everybody's wanting to bug out and live off grid. You know, we're at that. We've been through this before. You know, there was plenty of people who went off grid. You know, there was the people Jonestown. You know, they've always thought this is it. This is the end. You know, but some people don't realize there's an end to time, because time is a cycle. So, you know, a lot of people will get that impression that, you know, this is the end time. Well, it's the end of a time cycle, just like the end of a week or the end of a day.
That Randy and Vicki Weaver wanted.
There was definitely work involved in living that way. Dishes and firewood and hauling water and doing laundry with a wash tub and a washboard. I loved to garden, so as I got older, I kind of took over the gardening. Sam and I, we worked hard, but we enjoyed working and helping Mom and Dad out. You depend on each other for your survival living that way, so we were very close. Growing up on the mountain, there was so many things for Sam and I to explore and learn and do every single day. I was best friends with my brother, and I think it was good for us. I really do.
I don't know that Randy Weaver knew at the time that they moved to Ruby Ridge that they would be so close to the Aryan Nations compound, which was just 60 miles south. But they started showing up. At first, it was purely social. They attended family picnics and those kinds of things. But as Randy began to interact more with them, he started to buy into the message.
We, the white race, lost the war. A plague known as Jews won the war, infiltrated our bloodstream of our race in every country in which we reside.
The founding principle of the Aryan Nations was something called Christian identity theology, which teaches that white Anglo-Saxon Christians are the true descendants of the lost tribes of Israel, and that those who call themselves Jews are not merely imposters, but are actually children of the devil. It also teaches that African Americans and other people of color are subhuman.
Every major city in the United States is now non-white, following the catastrophic destruction of our race in the so-called Civil War, or the war between the states. America shall again become white and Christian. There'll be a lot of blood running one day. I don't advocate it. I don't want it. But it's going to come as sure as day follows night, night follows day.
The Weavers were on this journey of religious discovery that had led them to isolate themselves and to live in a style they believed was Old Testament Christian. Christian identity shares some of those tenets. So I think the Weavers saw some kinship in these people. But they also were really clear that they didn't want to join, that there were things they didn't believe, that they didn't agree with. Essentially, for the Weavers, the Aryan Nations was a chance to meet people and, you know, and to make friends.
Being there as a kid, It was just like a family vacation. I think my dad took us there out of curiosity.
So basically it's segregation, correct? Like a cult?
Exactly. That's what the Aryan Nations is.
Well, it's a cult. Anytime you get more than 10 people together, it's a cult.
He was always up for a debate, always up for a discussion. Being the inquisitive person that he is, he was like, sure, I'll go check it out.
Every summer, Richard Butler would host a gathering called the Aryan World Congress, which would attract fellow racists from all over the country.
What do we need? White power!
Some of these people were Christian identity. Some of them were Ku Klux Klan. There were outlaw bikers there, and skinheads and other neo-Nazis that were atheists. But their common denominator was their belief that the white race was the supreme race. And many of them wanted to basically declare war on the U.S.
Some people who had spent time with Butler up at Hayden Lake would go off in these splinter groups that became threats in their own way. They were very violent, very anti-government, were heavily armed. So the Aryan Nation was a cause for concern for those of us in law enforcement.
Starting in the mid-'80s, the feds wanted to know who's there and what are they doing and what are they planning on doing next. So by the time Randy Weaver started showing up at the compound, the feds were listening.
They had lots of events there designed to potentially recruit harder core folks into the Aryan Nations. And it was at one of those meetings that Randy Weaver was spotted by an undercover federal informant.
This guy got next to Randy Weaver and learned that he was, clearly a racist, that he wanted to live his white separatist lifestyle in North Idaho, but that he was having trouble putting two nickels together and that he was interested in some income. And one thing led to another, and pretty soon Randy Weaver agrees to saw off some shotguns.
Everything shifts when Randy Weaver saws the barrels off of those shotguns. He had now committed a federal crime, but it's so clear that Randy Weaver was not a guy up there sawing the barrels off shotguns and selling them. He only committed this act after talking to an ATF informant. But then the idea is we can turn this guy.
There's nothing unusual about that. It's the way the federal criminal justice system works. If they can take the information from, suspect number 1 and lead them to suspects number 2 through 10, that's what they're going to do.
Here's the government, and they come to you and they say, we've been watching you. We know that you sold a sawed-off shotgun. Now, if you won't work for us, if you won't help us to get inside the Aryan Nations and to get inside the white separatist movement, if you won't do those things for us, then we're going to arrest you and we're going to place you in jail and we're going to take away your property. And Randy Weaver said no.
A couple posed with a broken down truck on the road. And as mom and dad stopped to help them, they were thrown on their faces in the snow and frisked, and dad was, hauled off to jail. He had to post our home as bond. And he told us, if I lose my trial, we lose our home. And he's like, how am I going to win this?
These are people that want to be left alone. And Randy's arrest just galvanized the Weavers' hatred of the federal government. They really thought the government was
Okay, that sounds exactly like January 6th.
Exactly. Well, and I'd say some of those people were there. This is something That you know how in the Bible it says we're not at war with blood and flesh, we're at war with principalities. That's these people who have a belief of superiority. You know, that's like, and it's not just white people. You have, you know, the black power. You know, they every type of person wants to think they're superior. Even the Jews, you know, because the Bible says you are the chosen ones. So, you know, they think, hey, we're the superior people. But time has went so far since the days of Egypt and everything that our blood is so intermixed. Like I probably got black people blood in me. You probably do. You know, we're not, nobody's a pure blood no more.
I don't understand it, John. I've never in my life thought I was superior to another being. All right. I just don't envy anybody. I don't want for anybody's life. Anybody who wants my life is a fool. I don't think it, I don't go by color of skin or language or accents or any of that. That is total nonsense to me and evil. If you're gonna, you know, I don't care if you're freaking blue. If you treat me right, I'm gonna treat you right.
Exactly. And that's something too. You know, down like me and you and everybody in this panel and chat, we're common people. And where things go wrong is these people who think they are the masters. They think they have to control us, you know, that we're stupid, we're idiots, we're nothing more than cattle and sheep to them, you know. And they want to keep this racist, the whole thing alive. They want to keep the superiority thing alive, you know. And these are the principalities that we're at war with.
I don't think the Weaver thing has a whole hell of a lot to do with racism. I mean, you know, they said there that it was a socializing thing, and they agreed with some, but not all. But I mean, it's
there is where you're on to something. I can speak with experience over that. All right, Corn Pop. This is the thing: is if you are visited by a group, any group, like a militia or somebody, a militant group of any type, you're probably under surveillance. All right. So, because those groups are under surveillance, it only takes one time to be associated, get a picture with you and them. To me, it's always felt like a setup. You know, I've sold U.S. military surplus and sewed it, you know, with a sewing machine for decades. All right. I did gun shows and flea markets and all kinds of these things. And I've been approached by my share of those groups. All right. And I literally came up with a phrase, and I've said it hundreds of times in my life. I am not affiliated with any groups or organization. And that still stands to this day. I don't want any part of them because I know of the incriminating factors that can come along with it. You know, I mean, Timothy McVeigh comes to mind. He's from my home state, and there was something else going on with that. At least there was another person. What happened to that? Anyways, back to what I'm saying is, if they were invited to something, how did they even know what they were walking into? I mean, they could have been invited to a pig roast. They get there and they see a bunch of people waving flags, you know, and decide, well, this isn't something I'm interested in. Y'all have a good day, and they leave. Well, they still went there. Now that can be spun against them, you know. And the way I saw that, when they associate, from what I saw of Randy and his family, I didn't see any symbolism in his home. I didn't see any type. I might be wrong. There might be something, but I didn't see anything that he had that endorsed that type of behavior. So I thought it could have been a media spin.
Well,
no, I believe that, you know, they went there to socialize. I mean, they're out in the middle of BFE without a soul to talk to. I mean, you know,
they get into that where Well, go ahead, Zach.
I believe that the government wants to keep us separated by keeping us brainwashed.
Amen. They do. Divide and conquer, you know, or divide and control.
Well, then, ghetto, then I am a loner. So that's what I am.
But, you know, just like where the point they're at in this video right now, they set him up. You know, you had an ATF agent telling him, hey, man, why don't you saw off a couple barrels of shotguns for me, you know, and, you know, you'd be doing me a great favor. It's hard telling how he presented it to him, you know, and, you know, he you know, I think, I don't know if they've already gotten into it, but, you know, when you're out in the middle of nowhere, this man, his wife, and his family, they're out in the middle of nowhere. They want socialism. They want to socialize with people. And they see this group, and it's like, you know, going to a biker compound, you know, a lot of good people there, but they might believe differently than you do, you know, and you can get along with these people, and some of them are good people. Even though their belief is not good, there are good people in there, you know.
And that doesn't mean that there can't be bad people right along there and there with them.
Exactly.
I think the biggest issue on this is the government agent approaching him, paying him to do, you know, asking him to do this and offering to pay him for it, and then going after him. I mean, how in the hell is that not entrapment?
Yep.
Right. Right. I mean, the whole thing was an assassination. All right. They assassinated his son and his wife with their baby in her arms. They shot her right in front of him. This is bad. It's as evil as it gets. It's just like Koresh. They could have arrested Koresh in town. Yeah. All they had to do was wait him out.
He went jogging every morning on the same route. Yeah, they could have.
They made examples of these people. They used them as an example. Do not challenge the power of the U.S. government. This is what happens.
Yeah, I mean, on the Koresh thing, you know, the local sheriff was on good terms with Koresh, and I believe spoke with him during that thing, and was trying to work out a deal to end it, but three-letter agency shut that shit down in a hurry.
But it you know, and then we kind of reflect the here and now. There's a lot of people wanting homestead. There's actually, where was it? Somewhere in the mid upper north part of the United States, where people are making their own communities. You know?
What Bug Out just said.
We try not to listen to much of what Bug Out says.
Yeah.
Actually, I feel the exact opposite of that.
Well, and two, look at what they did with DC. Now people, American citizens, are labeled terrorists. And most of the people who were there that day had nothing to do with the instigators, you know.
Nope, and they're still sitting in jail.
Yeah.
Vicki wrote 2 letters to the U.S. Attorney for Idaho, which she addressed to the servants of the Queen of Babylon.
The Queen of Babylon. This is very much the language that was coming out of the Aryan nations. This language of a coming war with the Anglo-Saxon armies defeating the tyrant that was the federal government. She believed not only that we were living in the end times, but that she was being given signs and she was defiant.
I think she was at the end of her rope. I really do. And I think for mom and dad, it was, we're not going to take anymore. You know, getting thrown in the snow and sent to jail. And if you lose your case, you lose your house. They had to have been an emotional mess.
And then Randy doesn't show up for trial. What happened next was the brutality of bureaucracy. One agency leads to another agency. So the case becomes the responsibility of the U.S. Marshals Service.
Our job was to bring him before the court to answer charges. And that's all it is. It doesn't even necessarily mean he's guilty of anything. Our first step was to do a threat assessment. He didn't appear like he was going to run or abscond in some way. He had roots in the community. He had a family there. And I thought that time was on our side. But that threat assessment also showed that he was extremely committed to his cause. And that's what made that situation a little more dangerous.
The threat assessment portrayed Randy Weaver as a former Special Forces Green Beret who may have booby-trapped his house, living with the woman who would kill her own children rather than surrender. It was either worst case scenario or fanciful, but the assessment of the Weavers made them look more like criminals and less like a family.
My parents decided they would just stay up on the mountain until the legal aspect got figured out. And so all through that summer and winter, we didn't go anywhere anymore. We stayed up there. And the winters could get long. You know, sometimes we'd read 2 books in a day. We would play card games and Monopoly and Yahtzee and Scrabble, you know, all of those sorts of things in the long evenings. We had friends who would come see us who were concerned about the situation, who were concerned about us. You know, they'd bring us food and supplies and things. And my mom had my little sister up there during that time. And I think about that, I'm just like, wow, that took a lot of courage on both their parts.
Winters are tough up there. And during that time, I learned a lot about Randy. I must have interviewed several dozen people, neighbors, friends, and family. And I'd asked the question, why don't I just go up there and talk to him and tell him he's under arrest? And everyone said that would be the worst thing you could do, that he is committed, and that Vicky is as committed as he is.
During this time, the media caught wind of the fact that this family of white separatists was hiding out and had vowed not to be taken alive.
We published a story in early March of 1992 saying feds have fugitive under our nose. In that story, I quoted officials as saying that we don't want to go up there and get in a gun battle with kids. But the marshals are stuck with a federal judge's order saying, go get this man. We're a country of laws. Bring him to justice.
It was probably an embarrassing thing for the government because here's this guy on the mountain who they think is flipping the bird to them, and you know, they need to deal with it because it's making them look bad.
And so the marshals intensified it and decided to have motion activated cameras placed near the window so they could figure out how many people are there, who's carrying guns, and what are our options in terms of effecting an arrest. The tape showed that Randy Weaver was there with his wife and his children and a man named Kevin Harris, and that they frequently were armed. They have to be shaking their heads. What are we going to do? And then in May of 1992, Randy did an interview. And he said, I don't care what you do, I'm not coming off my mountaintop.
The longer a situation goes on, the more frustrating it becomes. So the marshals brought in their special surveillance team, and they skunked around the area trying to find a location to take Randy Weaver into custody without a problem. We've got a guy heavily armed, reportedly heavily armed. He's barricaded in a cabin. He's got his family in there with him. I mean, they just didn't know what to do with this guy.
Well, this is the approach from the east. How far you figure? 100 meters?
At times I had the feeling we were being watched. It was really hard to trust anybody at that point. Even our friends that came to see us. I mean, there was always that, oh, is this person maybe working for the government? Or is this person maybe, you know what I mean? It was all pretty unsettling.
On the morning of the 21st of August, 1992, we approached the mountain with 2 teams, 6 people. We followed the south trail. It was a logging trail that led to the Y area. And there we split, our 2 teams split.
At the first fork in the road, we took a left up a steep hill.
I took my surveillance team further up the mountain above.
I have a question. Why was the government watching Weaver? Did he actually break laws?
I guess that depends on how you look at how he come to have that warrant. I mean, well,
the ATF agent, he set him up by asking him to cut off them shotgun barrels. Yeah,
then you get into, yes, technically he did. The courts should overturn it, but will they? I mean, do I blame him for what he did? Absolutely not.
Weaver's place to a vantage point where we could observe what was going on. That particular day was nothing but to gain updated intelligence and see if they're still performing and doing their normal routines. Has anything changed? And to familiarize the other deputies with the mountain. I briefed them on various trails on the mountain and where we were going to go to set up an outpost. The other 3 deputies were down below, closer to the house, when the dog starts barking. I was hoping he would stop barking, but the dog gets more intense as barking. And at that time, I realized, oh crap, he's on their trail.
Sam and Dad and Kevin are like,
pretty accurate.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're getting to the part now that's really messed up.
Have you seen how that alphabet agency thing works now? I mean, we did it here in Michigan. They said, oh, there's a plot to kidnap Governor ‿ Then we find out that it was FBI informants, and the whole thing came down to be a setup. Just like with Bug Out, you just had it on the screen. That's what they do. They set you up.
Oh, exactly. I mean, all of our lives, we were led to believe that our government was for us. These agencies were all designed to protect us. But once you start looking into it and who's really the puppet masters, these people use these agencies really to get whatever they want.
Yeah, it seems like more now than ever.
Well, let's go check it out. I felt slightly torn at that moment. Do I follow him? Do I go home? And I was like, oh, they'll be fine. I'll just go home.
It wasn't within a minute or two that I hear the first shot. And a second or two later, I heard the second shot. And then in quicker succession, more shots. And it probably as many as, I don't know, 20 rounds being fired at that point.
I heard gunshots. And I heard more gunshots. And so I started to get worried.
I get a radio call. It says, Dave, Billy's been hit. Billy Deegan. I grabbed my guys and said, let's go. We headed in down a trail that would take us towards the Y. And we find Billy down there. Frank goes to work on him to try and help him. And he just looks up, and we know in the look in his eye that Billy's gone. How did it happen? You know, what happened there?
Family's version is that they're chasing deer into the woods, and there's a place where the trails come together in a sort of Y. Kevin Harrison and Samuel Weaver are coming down this way. Randy Weaver's coming down this way. And according to the family, at that moment, they see some men dressed in fatigued with dark paint and, you know, very much like a strike team, and that possibly to silence this dog, which has found their location, one of the marshals shoots and kills the dog. 14-year-old Samuel Weaver at that moment erupts and says, "You killed my dog, you son of a bitch," and opens fire. Again, according to the family, the marshals then fire back, killing Samuel Weaver. Of course, the marshals tell a different story. In their version of the telling, as these groups come together on this Y, the marshals identify themselves and call out a surrender order. And it's at that moment that Kevin Harris dives for cover, fires on the marshals, and shoots and kills William Deegan, a highly decorated U.S. Marshal in the Special Operations Group. And so you have these two incredibly different narratives. The marshals believing they've come under attack by white separatists, and the family believing they've been attacked by federal agents.
I saw Dad come walking up the road, and he was visibly upset, and he was by himself. And I knew something was wrong. Then I don't know how long it was after that. It seemed like a long time. Kevin came walking up the road, and he said, "Sam's dead." And then I think her mother's side kicked in, and she's like, "I'm going to get him. We gotta go get him. I'm not gonna leave him there." And so they started heading down the mountain. It seemed like forever before they came walking back. And yeah, I saw them carry him. He had been shot once in the elbow and once square in the back. My mom was a mess. I remember her just saying, "I'm going upstairs for a while," and Dad following her up. And we were just a grieving family. Like, what the heck just happened?
Right after the shooting, I came down off the mountain, got to a telephone, and contacted the U.S. Marshals headquarters. I briefed them on exactly what's happened. And that Billy's dead.
I need help, quick. We got an incident with Randy Weaver. I want the state police and all the help I can get.
When a cop gets shot, cops get pissed off. In this case, it was a federal cop killed on the property of a white separatist. And of course, the word reaches Washington, D.C., and it's now, in the front drawer.
At this point, we have another bureaucratic shift. What started as a Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms investigation and then became a Marshal Service fugitive hunt has now become an FBI case. The FBI begins to scramble its hostage rescue team.
HRT was the super SWAT of the FBI. They were designed to handle incidents that went beyond the capabilities of the local SWAT team. And Randy Weaver was reported to be a anti-government, racist, neo-Nazi sort of personality with some connection to Richard Butler and some connection to the Christian identity movement. In other words, very dangerous.
The hostage rescue team believe that they're deploying into an ongoing firefight with a white separatist and his armed family. Because they believe they're going into a firefight, the rationale is given that that a surrender warning doesn't need to be called out, that warning has already been given by the U.S. Marshals, deputy marshals on the ground, so agents can open fire as soon as they see any armed adult. Well, the Weavers are always armed.
They adopt a military rule of engagement. This is the enemy. You may kill them if they're armed. If they have a gun, you can and should use deadly force. That was actually the wording. You can and should use deadly force.
The very next day, a team of 10 FBI agents and the hostage rescue team surround the cabin. These are snipers. These are the FBI agents who've been trained to hit a dime from 200 meters.
That morning, we all were just trying to grasp what had happened the night before. And at some point, Dad said, I'm going to go see Sam one last time. His body was in the shed. And before I knew it, Dad and Kevin had headed out. So I went after them.
So Weaver was basically what patriots today are looked as?
Exactly. This whole thing could have been avoided. That's just like you had those two agents out there in the woods. When they heard the dogs, they could have just left. They could have avoided this whole situation.
Yeah, by not setting them up in the first place.
Exactly.
Our leaders are corrupt, and when they send soldiers into battle, they make the soldiers guilty by doing so. If those teams were told that he was an armed threat and were given instructions like that,
and did you
then
pay
it falls
attention
on
to
their
the wording?
commanding entities as responsibility for their actions.
Did you pay attention to the wording when they were describing Randy? An armed white separatist. Really, this is a bad person. This, you would think this was the devil himself and a whole army up there on that hill, but it's a man.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of that in the last several years now, haven't we?
Oh yeah.
What's up, Wildlife? Hey, Chuck, Silver Girl, Keno.
And that's when I heard a gunshot. I ran over to where Dad was, and he was holding himself, and I said, Dad, what happened? And he said, I've been shot. my mom came out on the front porch and was holding the door open, and she was like, "What happened?" And Dad's like, "I've been shot." And she started screaming, "Get in the house, get in the house, get in the house." So we get to the front porch, and I'm pushing Dad through the door, and Mom is right next.
What'd you do, Zach?
Exactly, Bushido.
Yep.
Yeah, like I said, the whole thing could have been avoided. And then, you know, the news was using words to try to justify them doing what they did, you know.
Holding baby ▏ and screaming, "Get in the house, get in the house." At this point, Kevin was coming in behind us, and I hear this giant just boom. And I felt things hit my face, and Mom dropped next to me. It took me a second to comprehend that Mom had just died, and that it was parts of her that had hit my face. That's when Dad, he went and picked up ▏ and handed her to Rachel and pulled Mom in the house so we could close the door. Because at that point we were being hunted. That's how it felt.
Where we were based at the roadblock, it was out of view of where this was occurring. We were down probably a good 2 miles or so from where the actual cabin was. Neighbors and friends of Randy Weaver and reporters from all over the country started gathering there, trying to get information.
We can tell you something, we will, but most of it will all come out of Washington, D.C. You know, I'm just trying to tell you the weather's bad, and, you know, that we're not going to come out and make some big statement.
They didn't let us see firsthand what was going on. But clearly, it was a big deal.
One of the things as a reporter that I reflect upon is the way we began reporting the story. Federal law enforcement only had one version of what was happening, and that was the way we covered the story. These are white supremacists. They're causing some trouble. There's a shootout with federal law enforcement. And the way information came out, you know, especially in the beginning, that was the narrative. And then the FBI discovers Samuel Weaver's body in the shed where Samuel had been taken by the family. And the story begins to shift a little bit.
Are you proud of yourself? Are you proud of yourself? You're gonna kill all the children and get one man who takes 800 of you. You're gonna have nightmares about this.
Come on! Baby killer!
Baby killer! Baby killer!
When we arrived on Sunday evening, we went through a group of demonstrators right at the bridge that were yelling and screaming, and we drove off that, and then in about a mile, and then they had a big open field with tents and trucks and helicopters. They looked like a real military base. I was working with the FBI's crisis negotiation team. We were called in because the hostage rescue team had not been successful in communicating with Randy. They had been bullhorning Randy in the cabin, but Randy had not responded to him. They hadn't been able to get in a hostage phone. He had no phone in the cabin itself. So HRT had just simply been yelling at the cabin
This was all going on behind a cloak of secrecy. I mean, the FBI is a secret agency, and the public doesn't need to know everything they do. But this was government in the dark.
If we can have your attention for a few moments, we can give you an update.
Once a day or so, their special agent in charge would come down and hold a pretty feeble press conference.
Do you consider this overkill? Get to fugitives, all these people?
No, I don't. I don't at all. This is a complicated situation because in the residence, there are juveniles. That's a critical factor that sometimes in our busy society we tend to overlook. It's a critical factor. And in our society, we place a high value on a human life.
At this point, they don't know Vicki Weaver's dead. The hostage negotiators would begin every morning by saying, Vicki, send the children out. We're having pancakes. Vicki, why won't you come talk to us? We won't harm you. Inside the cabin where Vicki is lying.
See, the government has always worked in the dark because the media is against us.
Oh, they work hand in hand. The media helped them cover this up.
The system is against us. All right. 20-something years ago, all it took was a delusional girl to tell authorities that I was ex-special forces and a bomb expert, and that I planned to blow up the city of Lapeer. And I was surrounded by an entire police force with drawn weapons, with people intent on shooting me if I breathed wrong. All right. And I submitted myself to this. It wasn't an arrest. And they asked to search my vehicle, and I told them all I had in it was nunchucks, and that's what they found. And they had to let me go because it was all lies. But they still put me in that position because of somebody's lies.
Exactly. The government, 36 to 46,000 laws and regulations. They can put you in the jail on anything, even a lie. They can put you in jail. They can ruin your life and say,
That's right.
Our bad, that was a mistake, after they done ruined your life,
Yeah, there's some study that came out a little while back that it was every American commits 3 crimes a day. There's so many laws on the books that people just don't know, or, it's such random stuff, but
they didn't punish her when it was all found to be all lies. She still got away with doing it.
Exactly. And that's kind of like the rule of thumb with the people in government. You can do whatever you want, just don't get caught. And this is kind of the rule they go by. And they are protected they get political immunity. They've got the judges in their pocket. They've got all the authority. They make laws. Actually, this is why we're where we are as far as like our economy, because they go in, they make these laws to where, like, there used to be a monopoly law. Well, they've altered the laws around where these people can now do whatever they want, and run our economy, where we're out here just barely getting it along and making it. They're making out like fat rats.
Been saying that for some time now.
Tarmac meeting.
It's like they got people into every place of importance and made corruption legal.
Yeah, for them.
Yes.
And the family believes they're taunting them.
My dad, he lost it. And he started to yell at him, and I wanted him to stay quiet. I was scared to death that they would find out his location and just open up on him. But he's like, "You shot my wife, you cowardly SOBs."
The negotiations were addressed to Vicky because we thought she was very influential towards Randy, and we thought that she was very strong as a personality and that she would be very helpful. Little did we know that she had been killed, and that she was he was incredibly offended by any mention of his wife, who's laying in the kitchen. It was awful. I mean, it was awful.
In his mind, we had proven everything that he felt and believed and been taught to believe about the federal government was true, and that it was coming true piece by piece.
Hey, Pastor.
Ruby Ridge became a huge propaganda opportunity for people like Richard Butler, who wanted to galvanize anti-government hatred.
You're a disgrace to the white race! Disgrace to the race!
But they all had their own agendas. Some of them were religious-based, some of them were neo-Nazi. At one point, a group of skinheads, and I was in the front row to see this, attempted to smuggle in a bunch of weapons and guns into Weaver, hoping they could somehow assist him.
It felt very much like there might be more violence. The FBI is trying desperately to find a peaceful solution.
We are taking every step we possibly can to, through the use of the phone, affect a surrender.
I remember listening to Paul Harvey and hearing him appeal to Randy on his radio program.
A telephone has been left right outside your door on the porch. Reach out and pick it up, and nobody will shoot. Your family wants to know what to do with Samuel's body. And also, I will arrange for an attorney in Spokane to represent you in the death of Deputy Deegan with a plea of self-defense. Consider your options. I'm offering you a chance to resume the isolation you prefer with your family. If you will just reach out and pull in and talk into that portable telephone.
We heard it on the radio when Paul Harvey had a message for my dad. But we didn't trust anybody for any kind of help or anything. I think it made me angry more than anything at the misinformation that we heard. I would cringe every time the media portrayed my dad as this wild man in the woods that the feds needed to take out.
Stand against the law is suddenly taking on the appearance of a full-blown war.
We didn't feel at that point very confident that we were going to be allowed to share our side of the story. We weren't even confident we were going to make it out alive.
By this time, I had contacted Randy and Vicky's families in Iowa. I'd tracked them down, and they were telling another story, not of white separatists bent on a race war, but on a family that took to the woods because they believed the end of the world was going to come. And that, I think, was the first time that the media started to shift the narrative a little bit. And at the same time, the FBI is realizing that this is not the situation that they thought they were coming into.
Is there any progress? We can't comment on anything of that nature.
Have you talked to him, though?
I didn't say that.
He has been in contact with you, then?
I didn't say that.
How many names do you have?
I won't comment. We have sufficient resources to accomplish the task.
The FBI didn't have many options. They were at wit's end. I don't think they knew what to do. They'd reached out to Vicky Weaver's sister and other family members, and he wouldn't respond. But clearly they weren't going to pack up and go home. I mean, they've got 400 federal agents on the payroll up there. And they've got the national media watching this.
A standoff between a man who is wanted by the FBI and a large number of federal agents. It's entered its sixth day. The man has been holed up in a cabin in a remote section of Idaho with his wife, 3 daughters, and a friend.
My mom was on the floor, dead. It was torture. but I didn't want to come out. I was scared to death of a door opening. I mean, they had proven that they were there to shoot at us. So them begging us to come out was like begging us to walk to our death in my mind. And I think Dad felt that way too.
When a suspect doesn't talk to you, it's a very negative situation. We were government negotiators, and Randy Weaver hated the government. That was going to be very difficult for us to overcome. And so we realized that Randy was going to need a third-party negotiator. It was like, we got to find somebody that he trusts, that can speak on our behalf and represent us, but we just didn't know who that was going to be until Bo arrived.
What's the word, Bo? The word is very encouraging, I think. I'm assured this, that they have every intention to treat Randy and Kevin with utmost human dignity. Now that is encouraging, because normally you get this one-digit IQ federal government mindset, and I was very, very encouraged by it. I think we're going to get a chance.
‏ was a hero to the radical right. Some people said he was a model for Rambo. He was a third-party candidate for president that year and made his way to Ruby Ridge, hoping that he could negotiate an end to the standoff. I think the FBI was desperate at this point.
I have been maybe overly optimistic, not about Randy, but about Agent George Glenn. He has been so cooperative, it's as if Washington was on holiday.
He's affiliated with his Christian identity movement. He's a former Green Beret. He's a big personality. And he said, I can help because Randy and I are both Green Berets. So on Friday afternoon, and this thing now is in the 8th day, HRT brings ‏ up in a Jeep.
So I was maybe 20 steps from the cabin. And I said, Randy, this is ‏ and I'm right here. And then I saw his face in the window. And he said, is that you, Bo? I said, yes, I'm standing on this rock. And then he said, they have killed Vicky.
So they're up there about an hour, and he comes back, and he says, boy, you guys really screwed that one out. I said, what do you mean? He says, Randy's been shot, Harris has been shot, and Vicky's dead. We just couldn't believe it. It was devastating, just absolutely devastating.
The 3 children are in good health. Kevin is all right, but he did suffer a wound. Randy is in good health. Unfortunately, Vicky is dead.
The reaction was a physical gasp. For the people that had gathered, it was like a thunderclap.
Never will you take another woman down. Never. May we die. We're going to war. You're nothing. Don't touch me. I'm with you right now.
Was horrifying. I mean, it was the first time, and we're a week into this, and now we're finding out that Randy Weaver's wife has been shot. So we now have 3 people dead, and the thing's still not over.
Kevin was critically wounded. The bullet that killed my mother went through his arm into his chest and barely missed his heart. Tore his arm open. I remember him begging to be just shot, put out of his misery. And I was like, no, this can't be happening.
So it was basically a government suicide mission.
It was a cluster all the way around.
This cannot be happening.
The next day came, and I went right up to the cabin, and I said, Weaver, if you don't let me take Kevin Harris, get him out of here and to a hospital in Spokane, I said, I am going to testify against you in court because it'll be your fault that he is dead. You make the decision. Now I'm telling you, give him up.
At 1:47 today, Kevin Harris came out of the house. He was given emergency medical treatment near the residence, then transported by air to the hospital. I can't overemphasize how pleased we all are, and I want to give a lot of credit to the efforts of ▴ and we're optimistic that we'll be able to, in the near future, report further progress.
After Kevin left the cabin, ▴ came with a body bag to take Mom. I remember Dad being really, really upset. Everyone just started crying.
I came in, I think he was probably just holding the girls, because I came in and went right straight to Vicky's body. Randy came over, and he got her centered in the body bag, and then I got it zipped up and carried her out of the cabin. Randy was just, he was grieved beyond imagination.
Randy Weaver had seen his dead wife lying on the cabin floor for a week. He had a dead son. He probably knew there was a dead marshal. He knew there were 400 other agents down in the field below him. It's like, how much longer are you going to do this, Randy? And maybe common sense finally started to set in.
That last morning, as soon as I got to the cabin, Weaver said, Bo, the girls and I have prayed all night, and the girls have told me we are not coming out. They're going to have to kill us, just like they did our little brother, and just like they did our mama. I went right up to the door, and I said, Weaver, damn you. Don't you tell me that we're not going to continue when I have carried your bride out of this cabin, and we've got Kevin Harris, who's still alive. Said, don't you tell me you're going to quit now. All of a sudden, the door came open. And Randy was looking at me, and he said, without turning around, he said, girls, get your things together. We're going to follow Colonel Bo down the hill.
When we finally left the cabin and stepped out into the sunshine, I still expected to hear gunshots, and I pretty much expected to die. But my dad made the decision for the family, and we just held hands, and, you know, that was the end of it, and I had peace with it at that point. They put my sisters and I in a car, and we drove down to the meadow, and it looked like a scene out of an army movie. I mean, it was just surreal. There were a lot of guys walking around in their shorts like they had just been on a camping trip or something. And all for us. You know, it made no sense.
You guys wouldn't believe how pretty my wife was. Jesus Christ. First time I saw her, if I ever thought this was going to happen, I broke in on a friend of mine dancing with her. I lit Nick at her.
What this is forced to try to scare the average American
So he won't open his mouth against the New World Order. That's all this is. Western people are independent more than East Coast people. We've already been pacified. So they got to pacify the West where people are true Americans. That's all this is.
I remember standing at the bridge afterwards, listening to some of the guys. They were joking and they commenting and saying, boy, the government is really screwed up now. And it was like, they wanted this to happen. I just turned around and walked off. I said, yeah, this is what they wanted.
People focus so much on who was to blame. But if you look at what happened and how many times it could have been averted and avoided, how many mistakes had to be made, and how many times both sides would multiply those mistakes. The question of who was more to blame is less interesting to me than the question of how did an all-American Iowa family end up with these beliefs, and how did the government end up treating them like a group of armed terrorists.
I do know there's a lot of remorse. And I know the FBI uses what happened to my family as a training tool as to what not to do. And that is hugely gratifying to me. But the same way they stereotyped my dad and blew him up into this thing that he wasn't, I think a lot of people do that with our government as well. And when you operate out of misinformation and fear, things can go wrong.
That whole thing just goes back into the government moving in, setting them up. Doing their normal.
Did anybody share the link to regular chat for that video? That seems, I've seen that footage, but it seems like a shorter version of one that I've seen.
That one's on Netflix too. Yeah, then I guess, is there more of that, Zach, or you don't? Is it over? Because it goes on to, hey, one is criminal trial, one is civil trial. I mean, just the fact that a person can beat the government in two different court systems shows how fucked up that situation was, or how fucked up they made it.
It's over for that segment.
There might be a longer version of that video out there.
So I think there is, because there's one that goes into the after surrender part, like I said, into the court cases and stuff like that.
Thanks, Tom. I have to look that up. I haven't watched much of this in a long time. Oh, it looks like Kino put it up there. That's an hour. I must just be associating that with a lot of other ones, because there were several shows on this subject. The Weavers alone, I mean.
What's sad is you go around and ask people, they don't know anything about it. Tell them name Weaver, and you get blank stare. Like I said, this is the kind of stuff that should be pissing everybody off. And it's like Bug Out said earlier that they haven't stopped. They've just got better at their craft.
Yeah, it's just like he just said and just now, too. He says, I'm glad he used the shorter version. It gets me mad watching stuff about this. And what is the FBI doing today? ? Dodging their jobs, digging up fake info on Trump, and radicalizing kids in Buffalo. Should have had Bug Out up on this panel, Zach. I think he's had the best comments of the night.
If I was to bet, Bug Out's probably playing with his monkey tonight. Because I think this is a subject he wouldn't want to miss out on.
Everybody's got something to hide except for me and my monkey.
Try again, Zach.
So it really doesn't surprise me that the government did this.
No, not at all. It shouldn't surprise you that they do it. Or the time after that. Or the one after that. I mean, hell, there's still, look at the Whitmer thing. That was federal agents instigating that whole ordeal, The only convictions they got out of it were the dudes that pled guilty after sitting in jail for, a year or more.
So next up, Waco.
Almost a year later.
And 2 of the 3 agencies involved again.
Janet Reno.
Same original instigator in them, both of these.
Janet Reno and Hillary Clinton.
In February 1993, approximately 130 men, women, and children lived in a large house just outside Waco, Texas, on property they called the Mount Carmel Center. The leader of this group was 33-year-old Vernon Howell, who later changed his name to David Koresh. David believed he had been asked by God to deliver the message of the book of Revelations in the Bible to the world. Rachel, David's wife, and their 3 children also lived at Mount Carmel. The Mount Carmel property was established as a religious retreat by its founders in 1935. Followers came to be known as Branch Davidians. In 60 years, there had been only one incident in an otherwise unblemished record of Branch Davidians' peaceful existence with their neighbors. Former leader George Roden's wife gave leadership of the group to Koresh. Roden then unearthed a dead woman in her coffin and challenged Koresh to who could raise the dead woman. Koresh called the police, who said they needed evidence. Koresh and several followers went to the ranch to take pictures of the coffin, and Roden opened fire. Roden was shot in the finger. Koresh and 7 others were arrested. All were later acquitted. Former leader George Roden also accused David Koresh of getting his 75-year-old mother pregnant.
He raped my mother.
In response, David replied,
If I took a 7-year-old woman and got her pregnant, then watch out. I'm God.
This statement, obviously said sarcastically, was repeated out of context over and over in the news media and by the FBI in the next weeks to portray David Koresh as having claimed he was God. Many people at Mount Carmel held responsible jobs in the outside community. Wayne Martin was a well-known and respected Harvard-educated lawyer. Sherry Jewell was a computer analyst and teacher. David Jones was a mailman. Mike Schroeder and Woody Kendricks were craftsmen. Church services were no different than what you'd expect at any church service.
His tongue is the pit of a... So how's God going to talk to me in the latter days? Amen. And who's going to bring that book? There will be no excuse.
Branch Davidians were well liked by many of their neighbors. And Davidians had some distinguished neighbors over the years. Texas Governor Ian Richards grew up in Waco. William Sessions was the mayor and the judge in Waco before he became director of the FBI. ATF Director Stephen Higgins and FBI spokesman Bob Ricks both attended Baylor University in Waco. And President Clinton recently appointed a new commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service. She too is from Waco. The house was built by the labors of the people who lived there. What happened to target these seemingly peaceful and religious people for the wrath of the United States government? Around 1987, Mark Breaux, a self-proclaimed prophet from Honolulu, Hawaii, joined the Branch Davidians at Mount Carmel. He was asked to leave in 1989 when he tried to take over the leadership of the Mount Carmel Center from David Koresh. Mark Breaux vowed revenge. He called several international agencies and made allegations against David Koresh of adulterous sex, child abuse, and gun stockpiling. One of the groups he contacted was Cult Awareness Network, a group that helps to arrange kidnappings and deprogramming of people who join religious groups. Deprogramming is a form of brainwashing. Cult Awareness Network pushed for investigations of the Branch Davidians. In 1992, Mark Breaux was provided a golden opportunity to get his revenge when a disc jockey named David Jewell became embroiled in a custody battle with his wife, Sherry Jewell, a Branch Davidian who lived at Mount Carmel. Mark Breaux approached David Jewell's mother to tell his sordid tales of sex abuse and guns. He then later testified at the custody hearing. In an interview with an Australian network in 1991, David Koresh himself answered these claims.
How many wives do you have? One. One wife. Have you committed? Have I committed adultery? Is what you fixing to have? Have you committed adultery? No, I don't commit adultery. You telling me the truth? I am telling you the truth. Have you beaten children? No, I do not beat children. I think the girl's name was Aisha. Yeah, were your parents there? The parents were there. Did you do it? No, I didn't do it.
Nonetheless, these very same allegations made their way into the search warrant affidavit written by alcohol, tobacco, and firearms agent Davey Aguilera on February 25, 1993. The ATF is responsible for seeing that taxes are paid on certain types of guns and enforcing federal gun laws. Why would these allegations be included in an application to search for weapons violations? The ATF has no authority to investigate child abuse or polygamy. And these allegations were investigated by the Texas Welfare Department and the McLennan County Sheriff's Department in 1991 and 1992 and were found to be baseless. Parts of the search warrant affidavit by Agent Aguilera were false. Here, Agent Aguilera refers to Shotgun News, a national newspaper with a circulation of 150,000 that is sold at newsstands all over the country. He calls it a clandestine newspaper. The affidavit describes how an undercover agent had observed the upper and lower receivers of disassembled.
I remember Shotgun News. That's good stuff.
AK-47s. The AK-47 has a one-piece receiver. There are no separate upper and lower receivers on an AK-47. Obviously, Agent Aguilera didn't have a clue, and Magistrate Green failed to notice. Agent Aguilera also stated that a neighbor heard machine gun fire, but he didn't state that the McLennan County Sheriff had already investigated this claim and found that David Koresh had a legal device called a Hellfire trigger that merely sounds like a machine gun, but is perfectly legal. Machine gun fire in itself is not evidence of illegal activity. It is legal to own a machine gun if the owner pays a $200 tax on the gun. But there was no evidence the Branch Davidians owned any machine gun at all. Bottom line, the raid on February 28, 1993 was launched because the ATF merely suspected that the Branch Davidians might have a machine gun that they had failed to pay a $200 tax on. Branch Davidian Paul Fata, who was responsible for many gun purchases, states categorically,
"There is no 50 caliber machine gun out there. There is a 50 caliber gun. It's a semi-automatic that was bought perfectly legal."
Aguilera also failed to mention that in July 1992, the ATF had inspected Hewitt Arms, a gun and gun parts store in Waco, where the Branch Davidians had purchased 225 guns. Henry McMahon, the former owner of Hewitt Arms, told Pete Zaralis of the Mobile Press that when the ATF agents visited Arms in July 1992, "I called David and told him the agents have a problem with you buying so many guns. He said, tell them to come on out."
So again, the government is snooping without any evidence.
Oh yeah, but did you notice anything? Like with Ruby Ridge, the people who were Christians were the ones who paid the price. You know, the Aryan Nation, skinheads, there's nothing, you know, done about them. It was the Christians. And here again, you have a group of Christians. Yeah, they might be a little off here and there, but there was no indication that they were they're terrorists, you know.
No, and then they do everything they can to try and build their case against them. Untrue, legal, illegal.
Exactly. They made stuff up.
The ATF agents declined this offer. Magistrate Dennis Green, the only U.S. magistrate in Waco, and himself a former U.S. attorney, issued the search warrant for the Mount Carmel property. An article in the August 30th, 1992 Waco Tribune-Herald revealed that the small town of Waco had an extraordinarily high rate of federal gun prosecutions compared to the rest of the nation, under the direction of Bill Johnstone, the U.S. attorney in Waco. This high rate of prosecutions in Waco for gun law violations may well come from the ATF's and Magistrate Green's ignorance of federal gun laws. Although Agent Aguilera claims in the affidavit to be experienced and to know about federal firearms laws, he confuses the meanings of the words machine gun, destructive device, explosive, and explosive device, all of which have different specific meanings in the federal law books. Magistrate Dennis Green failed to notice. Nonetheless, reporters at the Waco Tribune-Herald began a scandalous series of articles about the Branch Davidians the day before the ATF raid. The reporters claimed to have interviewed former cult members. The allegations sounded amazingly like the allegations of Mark Bro and the Cult Awareness Network members. This diagram depicts the house at Mount Carmel as it appeared on the day of the raid by ATF on February 28, 1993. In press accounts, the ATF claimed that the raid was moved up a day after the ATF learned that the Waco Herald Tribune had started its series the day before. This was the first of many outright lies. The warrant would expire if it was not served by February 28th, and the raid took place on February 28th. What you are about to see is the first film footage of the initial raid as it was provided to all the network television feeds. This film was heavily edited by someone before it was distributed across the networks. It contains obvious glitches where film has been cut out, but even this editing wasn't enough to remove the truth. We'll show these next 3 scenes 3 times. Watch closely. In the opening scene, agents are in position behind cars, shooting at the front of the house, as 2 teams of 4 agents climb ladders on the side of the house to the roof. Now we'll replay what you just saw. Notice that there are no bullets hitting the ground or cars around any of these ATF agents. The 3 dark dots low on the horizon are helicopters. The sound of automatic weapons is coming from the M16 and MP5 machine guns used by the ATF agents. In the next scene, 2 teams of 4 agents were supposed to secure the roof within 30 seconds of arrival. Notice that no one is shooting at these agents as they climb the ladders. Several of these agents are carrying fully automatic rifles. The agent at the top right side just managed to shoot himself in the leg. Did you see it? We'll watch that again. The 9mm pistols carried by the ATF have no safety protection on them. As the agent climbs the ladder, he reaches for his gun in the holster. It discharges, wounding him in the leg and causing him to slip. He is able to continue up the ladder, however. According to ATF spokesman ― the raid on Mount Carmel had been planned and rehearsed for months.
They drilled over and over again, and we got our plan down, we got a diversion down, all were put into effect, and they were waiting.
Next, we see 3 of the 4 agents on the roof breaking into the window.
Give me another tape then.
Let's watch this part again. No one is shooting at these agents. The shooting you were hearing is from the agents on the ground in front of the house. Notice that the agent is carrying 2 types of grenades on his belt. He also is carrying a smoke grenade. Both agents at the window toss in what appear to be smoke grenades. After these agents get through the window and into the room, you will briefly see the 4th agent on the roof, followed by one of those badly edited cuts in the film. The film picks up with the 4th agent tossing something into the room. It makes no sense for him to be throwing anything at all into a room where the 3 ATF agents have just gone, unless he intends to injure his own men. He also fires a machine gun into the room twice without looking. We'll watch it at normal speed, then slow it down. Now let's watch it in slow motion. Here he tosses something and withdraws his hand from the window. Next, without looking, he fires a burst from his machine gun into the room. Someone begins shooting from inside and bullet holes appear in the wall. In the midst of this gunfire, 3 holes appear at the same time. The agent fires his machine gun into the room a second time. He's then hit by...
The 3-letter agency is basically doing this without remorse since they aren't being attacked.
Yeah, they have zero remorse for anything they do. There's a whole lot of shady stuff with this one.
Yeah. You know, it's like a sheep at slaughter time.
Round. The bullet strikes him in his helmet on the backside of his head. He falls to the roof and grabs his head. This agent is not hurt, and he later makes it safely down the ladder. Regardless of who is shooting from inside that room, this agent just threw what appears to have been a grenade and fired a machine gun twice into the room where his 3 fellow ATF agents have just gone. All 3 of the agents who were sent into the window were killed. All 3 were Bill Clinton's bodyguards during his presidential campaign. A 4th agent was killed that day before the shooting started as he exited the cattle car.
We're extremely proud of what happened out there, how our agents conducted themselves under some unbelievable circumstances. They did a fantastic job.
David Koresh says
They fired on us first.
Got a smart chat here tonight.
So what are your guys' takeaways from Waco?
More government overreach. They had a target. They fabricated their reason to be there, and I completely believe that they fired first. I don't know if this video will get into it, but the front door was a big piece of evidence that got mysteriously lost.
Yeah, there's just so much shady stuff in this, you know.
Like I said, I don't know if this video covers it or not, but the front door, one of the lawyers said he saw the door when he went in to talk to Koresh, and it had every bullet hole was from the outside in. There were none from the inside out. And that door was mysteriously lost by the FBI.
And they were saying that they had all this grenades and everything else. Why didn't they use them? You know?
Yeah.
There was a video of Timothy McVeigh. He was supposedly quite a ways away watching all this take place.
Yeah, selling bumper stickers.
Yeah, selling bumper stickers. Now, this is a boy, a young man, selling bumper stickers, but yet he is blamed for blowing up the federal building. It just don't, it all don't jive.
Good portion of my life, I've had people call me nuts for digging into these conspiracy theories. I feel right at home here, guys.
I mean, if anybody just sits down and watches this, I mean, it's just like one leads into the other, into another, and it makes sense. I mean, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck.
Well, and two, with the internet now, I think we'd all still be pretty much lost if it wasn't for this internet.
Yeah.
If we're able to put a lot of pieces together, like just these series of videos that we're watching right now. Before the internet, it's kind of like, okay, you see it on TV, it's gone. Okay, and you don't really give it no more thought. But now we can instant replay, we can slow it down, we can watch it again. And it's kind of like, wow, this is how they done it.
Yeah, bug out. There's issues with that one too, with the CS that the tanks were pumping in, and there's video from above showing them tossing. I think they said there's more CS gas, just hand grenades in. And then they were talking about, how they do have fire.
The morning they started clearing the vehicles and the armor moved in, I knew it was a death sentence to everybody in that building.
Yep. Just like Waco, it turned into pretty much a military exercise. And two, everybody likes to argue, our right to bear arms. Really, our rights to bear arms should be, and we used to be considered, the American people have the right to have the same firepower equal to our government. Meaning, we should be able to have tanks, whatever it is, just as long as we.
Yeah, because it's written that as what is it? They like to play the hunting thing. Why do you need 30 rounds to hunt? Well, that's not how it was written. It was written to prevent tyrannical government takeover.
Exactly.
Brian Griffin, that was part of the psychological warfare division where they had speakers mounted on the tops of Humvees.
And bright lights and,
Playing Jane Fonda and rabbit squealing.
Like I said, it's all psychological.
I remember seeing the Iraqi soldiers on the other side of the berms on the receiving end of that speaker warfare, and they were scared to death because they heard things like Ted Nugent screaming all night long. They said they thought that it was demons.
Yeah, wasn't it? It was here over in Afghanistan or one of those.
That was in the first Desert Storm.
Yeah, and the soldiers just put their hands up. They were like, we give up. There wasn't even a fight.
Yep, it worked on them. the sound off?
I don't know why this part lost sound.
It's an old video.
Yeah, Yankee, the M151A1 rollover nightmare before the kit.
Was that it, Zach?
Yeah.
Yeah, but all the tanks and armor, and
Yeah,
was all that called for?
no, not at all. I mean, even if they had a legit reason to be there, like I said, they could have snagged him, a half dozen other ways. He jogged every morning the same route.
But just like with Ruby Ridge, it was basically, I think all that was to send the rest of the world a message.
They chose. Yep.
The message is, if you're a Christian and you want to proclaim your sovereignty and have your rights and your freedoms, don't try it.
Mm-hmm. This is what happens when you mess with us.
Makes me wonder if you're affiliated with Hell on Wheels, Yankee Watchdog.
There's several other documentaries out there that go way more in depth into it. Like I said, talk to the lawyers after. And it's got video of the tanks coming in and infrared video and yada yada yada. I mean, the info is there if you'll just go look for it.
Yeah, like you saying, the door that mysteriously disappeared. All kinds of stuff. Go ahead, Sam.
It's really unbelievable how much the government tries to blow everything up when it doesn't need to be.
Yeah. They have to justify their existence on TV, standing at the podium.
They'll do whatever they can just to get what they want.
Next up, Oklahoma City.
Of either being good or bad people, you know, and this is, they hide amongst us, sheep dressed in or wolves dressed in sheep's clothing, and this is how they can get away with it. They're hiding right in plain sight, but you can't tell. You know, it's kind of like that movie where the guy had the sunglasses and he puts them on, he can see all the evil people, and he takes them off. Now everybody looks the same, you know. And this is kind of what we're dealing with, the principalities.
That was They Live with Roddy Piper.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, that one document, I put it in the chat for everybody too. It's a very interesting read. But what we're dealing with is something that mankind, civilization has dealt with since the beginning. You know, you have a group of people who want to be the rulers and the controllers. And even though like their empire has disappeared, like the Romans, where'd they go? Well, a lot of the people died off and moved away, but the rulers moved, and like the pharaohs went to Rome, and then from Rome they went to the Vatican and to basically Switzerland area. That's why you don't hear a lot about Switzerland. You know, that's the hidden hand.
Hey, Sita, it's good to see you.
See, everything is connected by the government, and that's why we need it to be back in the hands of we the people.
There's so much bureaucracy, so many laws, so much crap. It's like old dangerous Ron used to say, you know, it needs to be thinned out.
Yeah, there's so much, you know, and we're looking at things now, but really now is actually affected by our past. And that's why I like to look at history and everything. And even history has been corrupted. Just like right now, look at the history that's been documented that's not correct. That's like January 6th. You know,
those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah,
but on the other hand, the winner writes the lie. I mean, history.
Yeah. But that's even like, you know, as we were watching the Oklahoma, you know, I kept getting flashbacks of 9/11. You know, it's like they keep using the same playbook over and over again.
Where in the world? You did that link you just posted. I just saved that link a couple days ago. Somebody posted it. I don't think it was you. Somebody else is sharing that link around too, John.
Which one was it? The Holy Grail?
Yeah, I was at that site, the Guidestones in northwestern Georgia, back in the 80s. Even in the 80s, it didn't register to me really what it was. It took me a long time to realize what was going on with that.
Well, and two, as you start looking into this, like everybody's realizing, a lot of it, you know, it's hard to believe, you know, and in a way too, we don't want to believe it. I don't want to believe it, you know, but it's like, wow, you know, using your common sense about a lot of this stuff, just by, like, even, let's say 9/11, you know, like the Pentagon. It's like, no way, that hole wasn't big enough.
Well, it's quite clear to me what's going on, John, and nothing that I see new or anything I learn changes my mind. They're out to destroy this country because we are the only thing that really stands in the way of the New World Order. That's their goal, is to take us down.
Exactly. You know, and it goes deep. It goes really deep, you know, as far as like the United States. And when you start looking at like the East India Trading Company and the West India Trading Company, and how history itself, like in the Middle East with everything that goes on in Britain and the Vatican, and they started coming to power. And the United States was a part of the one world order. In a sense, you know, back then they called the United States the New World, to be part of the New World Order. You know, even like Washington was a British officer, you know, and he was the first president of the United States. We're going by the British Bar Association. You know, so when we read the Declaration of Independence, it's just a document. It's kind of like, you know, when you create laws, only the people who are law-abiding will abide by them. Criminals don't, you know. That's like we're finding now, like our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and all these other documents that are supposed to be sacred. These people, they ignore them. They, you know, to them, it's kind of like, this was our belief. This was our, we were thinking, okay, we're protected by the Constitution. To them, it's a piece of paper. You know, they don't have no respect for it. They have no, all they care about is themselves and their secret, they say secret society, but it's not really a secret. The biggest secret society is called government. You know, look at every document and everything, it's top secret or, you know, confidential, and we don't know what they're doing.
That's why I'm trying my best to expose the history so we could have a better future and not repeat history.
Exactly. You know, my favorite saying is the truth is going to set us free and love is going to bring us together. You know, we need to love our fellow man and our fellow sister in the world and come together. You know, that's the way we're going to defeat this.
What you thinking there, Zach? I can see the gears turning. We shall see, Matrix. Dang, homemade peach ice cream. Wow.
Yeah, I was watching I can't think, Rescue, I think, and everybody was talking about food. And I was sitting there starving to death.
Yeah, food comms can be brutal. I ain't eating nothing that nasty, Tom.
That's like eating crap.
Who sung that song? Eat the rich, eat the Crocus from the 1980s. Sing a song called Eat the Rich. Doesn't sound appetizing.
No. Yeah, I think you know, as more people like Zach and Hawk and people get the truth out, this, I believe, in itself is what's going to change everything. We have
Lenny's version of that it was a rocker too bug out.
Motorhead.
Is that all you got for us there, Zach, or you got another one in your back pocket?
Yeah, Cam. I put a link in the private. The American Patriot. I don't know if you saw that one or not. But that was the documentary about the Bundy Ranch.
Yeah, Verdi, I like that band.
I've been seeing some really weird bands like Ghost.
I haven't been listening to enough music. I need to start therapy with that. I've actually lost my taste for anything fun, celebratory. I'm even losing my humor. This stuff's got to end.
You can't let it get to you. You might need to step away, you know.
I have been a little. I've been stepping away a little. But it's not really helping because I've got too much on my mind. Too many things have been said and no evidence or proof, you know, of certain justice. All right. You know, I mean, there's hints of it. But, you know, it's like the more you know and the longer you've known, the longer the wait is. And the harder it is to shut off.
Exactly. But I mean, that's like, you know, I ponder and I search, you know, it's kind of like I'm in a quest for the truth. And sometimes
every day, brother. Every day.
Yeah. And I had to step back. You know, I spend time with my grandchildren and I enjoyed the blessings in my life. And two, even in my search for the truth, a lot of things that are happening now, I find are, like you said, hints. That's just like, you know, everything going on like with the baby formula. Could it be that actually now we are actually in a reversal of all this corruption to where, you know, they were allowing basically poisons to come out in the market for us in our food and our water and different things? Could it be now that they are actually trying to clean up that mess?
Yeah, it's possible. I've thought of that aspect of it myself. But you know, it's more like this with me. It's like with Durham. You know, everybody's hopes are on Durham. And I'm not so sure that he's going to go in there and do the right thing. I'm not sure anything's going to come of it. He was appointed by Barr. You know what they say about him. You know, this, for all I know, they're going to get a month into this and go, yeah, actually, it was all Trump's fault. You know, I don't know what to expect anymore.
Right. And I think that's the way it's going to be, you know. But the fact that we are aware, we're looking, we're staying alert and we're watching, however it plays out, that's just like, you know, like Biden. everything, just his appearance, you know, pictures from his past to now. He's not really who they want us to believe who he is, you know. Even over there in Ukraine and all that, you know, in 2014 and 2016, Ukraine was actually killing their own people and trying to blame Russia for it.
The color revolution.
And, you know, even over in Israel and Iraq and Iran, I believe now we're in the process of trying to correct the things that some of these politicians and these one world order people, you know, whatever label you want to put on them, have been trying to take us down that road. I believe, you know, we're in a point now where it's kind of like, no, we changed our minds. We're changing directions, you know.
You know, there's two different narratives about that whole thing. Here the mainstream media is saying, oh, Russia's losing, Ukraine's the good guys, and everybody should support the Ukraine, and oh, those bad Russians are doing this and doing that. And then if you look into it, you'll find that it's the Ukrainian militias firing on the Ukrainian people to incriminate the Russians, who have almost finished mopping up there. All right. And then you find out that it's, you know, 53,000 casualties of Ukrainians compared to 14 to 19,000 casualties Russian. So you have two completely different stories working that do not mix at all. All right. And then all I can say is I don't trust anything the media says anymore. I haven't in years, right? So this guy on the ground that's telling me and interviewing Ukrainians that have lived there for years, that are saying they've been under oppression by these Nazi bastards for all this time, I'm inclined to believe that more than I am our media.
Yeah, the media's been lying to us all along, you know. But even, you know, with some of the media now, I believe they're just still pulling the wool over our eyes.
Oh, they'll do it every time. They spin everything. They'll double spin things. I think that they make up crap just to confuse us more. You know, they'll make up a fake conspiracy theory just to throw people off. I really think that it's disinformation and propaganda all at the same time.
Exactly. You know, they want us in the dark, and that's where we're at. Even a lot of our, you know, when you listen to some of these people who are trying to say, well, Trump's doing this and Trump's doing that. And it's like, you know, are these mind readers? You know, how do they know what's going on? You know,
Zach's got something, John.
Go ahead, Zach.
Well, hey family, thank you for coming tonight and joining us. Also thank you Camo Carl, Brother John and Cornpop for joining me on panel. I just want to say that we have this. Sure, it's going to be a struggle, but we need to stick together and bow down. Have a great night and I love you all. Before we go, dear Lord, I just want to ask you for protection going forward. We need to get the truth out because we are a light for you to shine everything that is going on. I love you, my Lord. Amen.
Amen, Zach.
Amen. And thank you for having me here, Zach.
It was an honor, Zach.
Love everybody. Love everybody in chat. I'll see y'all somewhere soon. We've been dancing with the devil far too long.
We need you now. We need you now. We need you now.
Nothing